Welcome to the Elk Talk Podcast with Randy Newberg and Corey Jacobson. Presented by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation.
The goal is, what little you and I know about elk hunting, we share with people.
I've got an elk building. It's like 120 yards away. What do I do? First off, the thought would never cross my mind when an elk's being 120 yards away to call anybody on a cell phone.
All elk?
All the time? Only elk?
Only elk.
Well, it's us having conversations, so we usually go down some rabbit holes, but
If you hunt with Corey Jacobson, you will find the landscape is full of rabbit holes. We're just going to make this up as we go.
and you look at it like, oh, that's a target-rich environment. But if you're trying to single one out, a solo target there is much easier to go into than a big group.
We record everything, so there's no BSing, no lying, no faking it with us.
Did we hit the record button?
I forgot to hit the record button. If you want to know something about elk hunting, this probably isn't the podcast to listen to. Should we give them a list of all the other podcasts where they might learn something? The Elk Talk Podcast is brought to you by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, ensuring the future of elk, other wildlife, their habitat, and our hunting heritage. To become a member, go to rmef.org.
The Elk Talk Podcast is also brought to you by Mountain Ops, making outdoor energy and performance nutrition to make you a stronger and healthier elk hunter. They have a full line of hunting-related supplements, including meal replacement shakes, multivitamins, pre-workout fuel, and post-workout recovery. And my favorite, their new performance protein bars that, by the way, are packed with 270 calories and 20 grams of protein, but contain less than 6 grams of sugar. Visit mountainops.com to learn more and to order, and be sure to use the promo code ELKTALK to save on your next order.
The podcast is also brought to you by Gerber. Go to gerbergear.com and learn about the knives, the Vital, the Big Game Vital, the Gator Premium, all the things that we use when we're out in the woods, and not just knives, but also some really cool multi-tools that they have.
And we have a promo code for Gerber as well. Just use the code ELKTALK to save 20% on your orders at gerbergear.com. And we are also brought to you by Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls. And Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls is the original designer and inventor of the pallet plate diaphragm that's completely changed the way elk calls are made and used. And to find out more and to order your elk calls, go to RockyMountainHuntingCalls.com or BuglingBull.com and use promo code ELKTALK, and you're going to save 15% on all of your elk calls and elk call accessories.
The Elk Talk Podcast is also brought to you by GoHunt.com. Go to GoHunt.com and sign up for the Insider. The Insider is changing how hunts and hunting information are found. No doubt about that. Use promo code ELKTALK, and when you sign up for the Insider, you're going to get $50 of store credit, mad money, in their gear shop.
Lastly, the University of Elk Hunting online course is a proud partner of the Elk Talk Podcast. And within the University of Elk Hunting online course, you're going to find nearly 60 chapters organized in 17 modules of elk hunting instruction aimed at making you a more successful elk hunter. From planning and e-scouting to calling strategies and packing, every imaginable elk hunting topic is included in the online course. And regardless of your previous elk hunting experience or success, I'm confident the University of Elk Hunting online course will make you a more confident, more successful elk hunter. Just visit elk101.com and use the promo code ELKTALK to save 20% when you sign up for a membership to the University of Elk Hunting online course.
And with that, Corey, we are ready to get into it.
Let's jump into it.
Hey, Corey, how you doing?
I am doing great. How are you, Randy?
Oh, I'm so glad to hear you're doing great. I'm doing good now. I've had a pretty eventful last 2 weeks.
I've heard a little about it.
Yeah, a bunch of Facebook hackers working for Mark Zuckerberg took over my Facebook page. And, a lot of people know I have a bum liver. So this is no secret that I go back to the Mayo Clinic every couple of years. So I'm at the Mayo Clinic and they're doing a new lube oil and filter on me and my liver. And I got to fight with Facebook the whole time I'm back there. It's like, you know what, folks, I'm over medicated right now and I could say something really bad. And my wife is hiding my computer. So I'm
Smart
having my,
move.
yes. Because when they go do these procedures, they run cameras down your throat and stuff. And so they put you to sleep when that happens. And so a lot of times I'm pretty rummy while I'm back there. And my wife hides my computer and my phone. So my son Matthew is responding to all these people who are saying, "Hey, your Facebook page is hacked." Yes, we know. So it'll be a week ago tomorrow, and we still don't have control of our Facebook account.
Wow.
Yeah. But I tell you what, they are making a lot of money, those hackers, because I can log in. They move all of us down to analyst. And if you have a business Facebook page, you know that the highest level is administrator. And so when they somehow crack the firewall, they move everyone else down to administrator. They change the multi-factor notifications of emails and stuff. So I can go in and look at what they're doing. The first video they posted has already made $13,000 of ad revenue.
The video they posted.
They posted.
So they posted a video to your account.
Yep. So I have no control over this. So some man or woman from Thailand posts this video, and I've never been able to monetize any of my videos. So when you go into my insights and it says estimated revenue, it's always 0, 0, 0, 0, because we have firearms and knives and hunting and other offensive things in their mind. And the first video they posted, they're already up to $13,000 of revenue for their split. And usually it's like a 60-40 split with Facebook.
So how many views are on that video?
Millions.
On your channel?
On my channel.
What's the video of?
It's some dudes pulling a shark out of the water, and it looks like a bad rerun of Jaws or something. And
this brings a couple of ideas to mind.
Yeah.
Number one, if you can get their contact information, I think you should hire them.
For sure. Yeah.
Because somehow they allowed your channel to be monetized, which you weren't able to do.
Yeah.
And secondly, they're getting millions of views on your channel. Maybe you need some content ideas there you need to send Marcus and Dale shark fishing.
Maybe, but I went and looked as an analyst. I can go look at where the views come from. 98% of the views are coming from Asia, mostly Southeast Asia. And so I'm trying to figure out who is spending money on these videos. Because I'm trying to wonder, have they also hacked somebody's ad account? Because if you have a Facebook business page, you can go and buy ads. And are there great big ad accounts where, a few thousand here, a few thousand there, that's just a rounding error in the budget where no one notices it? And they're directing all those ads to their videos? Because it's not going into my account. I checked my bank accounts and
got excited at first, and I realized it was a negative in front of it. That meant that I'd spent that much.
Yeah. So that was exciting for the last week. It's still ongoing. I don't know what I'm going to do. A member of the Montana congressional delegation, one of their staffers, called me just before we got on this. I listened to the message. I'm going to call him back later. Who knows? Maybe this senator will be given the heart. Yesterday, I'm all fired up, so I did an Instagram live, which is kind of ironic, right? You get on a platform owned by Facebook to complain about Facebook. Yeah. But I was all fired up. I'm like, I'm going to read them the riot act. And then on the way here, I see a guy. He's riding a bicycle down the road. His left leg, he doesn't have a leg below the knee. I'm like, man, that guy is after it. This is an example of making the best of a bad situation. So he's driving a bicycle, and he's got only his right foot on the pedal, and in his right hand, he's got a coffee that he's drinking while he's riding his bicycle down the sidewalk. I'm like, you know what? this guy needs to be the meme of, when given lemons, make lemonade.
Multitasking.
So I come to the office here to do that live event, and I'm like, Randy, if Facebook jacking your Facebook page is the worst thing that happens to you this year, it's probably going to be a pretty good year. And that guy got me, just seeing that guy got me in an upbeat mood. So I talked about it on the Facebook Live, and I hope I don't get in trouble for this, because it's kind of a grade school thing you used to do that is an adult statement on words. You used to go and give. There was always that snotty kid on the playground that would pick on, come and flick your ear or hit you with a slush ball or something. And when you got the chance, you ran up there and you grabbed him by the undie britches and you lifted him up and gave him a double wedgie or something. And so I said I'd like to do that to any of the leadership of Facebook. I want to give them a wedgie. I don't know if that's that's like a figure of speech, but I'm probably going to get investigated by the powers to be for threatening to give Mark Zuckerberg a wedgie or something. But and then I went on to talk about how I wish Facebook was a tangible physical object, so I could throw it up in the air and we could shoot them with shotguns,
Exactly.
kind of like treat them as clay pigeons or something. Then I'm like, oh, great. Now I'm headed even further down the... I'm probably going to have the law here shaking me down any moment.
Yeah, you're bringing violence and guns into it.
Yeah. So anyhow, but that's 7 minutes of you asking me how's it going.
Well, there's 7 minutes worth of content right there. I'll tell you what. Taiwan companies posting shark videos on your Facebook account and making $13,000. I mean, you got my wheels spinning.
Yeah. Oh, well. Yeah. I don't know what to do. I still don't have control of my account. And here's the funny part. We report all this to Facebook. So you establish, it's called the ticket number. And they want this and this and this and this. So RJ, my operations guy, he's providing them everything they need. And I'm like, well, why don't you ask the same of these dudes over here, at this university in the Philippines? Why don't you ask them to verify? Don't ever hear back from them.
Yep. That's what I was wondering. How can you not get into your own account, but somebody else was able to get in, monetize it, make a whole bunch of money? And
yeah. So, and when I did that live video yesterday, the number of other people who've had this happen to them, I was surprised. I got a ton of emails yesterday saying, hey, I own this company and they had control of our page for 3 months. I'm like, holy cow. And they're like, finally, we pretty much just gave up. And so I've always said, blow up your Facebook. There's an old John Prine song called Blow Up Your TV. Don't have your kids listen to that song, because it's about him in a strip club in Montreal. And he asks one of the gals there, you seem awful happy. What's the secret to happiness? She's like, blow up your TV. So this is a song from the 1970s. And so I've always said, blow up your Facebook. You'll be a lot happier. And the only reason I have Facebook, you know how it is in our business, Corey.
Yep.
Sponsors expect you to have all these platforms and share posts here and do this. Because if I could, I'm so bad at Facebook and Instagram. I have such little interest in it. I have a firm that does it out of Minneapolis. I don't even know half the time what I'm doing when I'm out there. So I could blow it up.
Sure that firm isn't taking advantage and posting videos of sharks on your account?
Well, I've been talking to them. They seem pretty frantic. And if they're making that kind of money, they're doing a really good job of hiding it, because the partner in charge lives a pretty frugal life. But I don't know. Anyhow, the moral of that story is, folks, blow up your Facebook.
Yeah. Blow it up. But not your Instagram. That's owned by Facebook.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out how I can get even with them by doing something on Instagram. I'm thinking if I did this really viral video, like hair on fire video on Instagram, how funny would it be if a really popular viral video on Instagram was talking about what a bunch of corrupt operation they allow to happen over there on Facebook. So,
Yeah.
or we need a meme of someone giving Mark Zuckerberg a wedgie.
I'm sure after this episode airs, somebody's going to be sending in a picture or a drawing. There's that Wild Country Comics guy on Instagram that he seems to always have a cartoon of you.
James, I need to reach out to him. He's from Maine. Hey James, do me a comic with me giving Mark Zuckerberg a wedgie. Or the other thing, remember how you'd grab someone, you'd put them in the headlock, and you'd rub your knuckles on their head?
Yeah.
And
what do we call that? A noogie?
Noogie. Yeah, that's a Three Stooges noogie.
Yep.
I was going to talk about that, but I thought, boy, that's getting to the border of maybe threatening violence. So as I started to talk about it, I crossed that off the list. But
that's probably good.
And you and I come from logging families, so we know that when things really got serious, it wasn't usually solved by just wedgies and noogies. Right? It was like, let's go out back here.
Let's go on the Jerry Springer show.
Yeah.
Take care of this.
So let's talk about elk hunting. This is called Elk Talk, not Facebook Talk or Wedgie Talk. So last time we talked, there were two topics that came up in the emails we got. One is about your shed hunting. Do you call it shed hunting or do you call it antler hunting? Or is it collecting or picking? Or what's the proper term?
When I was growing up, all the loggers and the locals called it horn hunting.
Okay.
But, several of us posted that when we first, when Instagram became popular, and we were like, going out horn hunting for today. And so many people corrected us and said they aren't horns. They shed them every year. They're antlers. And I'm like, we understand that they shed them every year. We're out picking them up. So anyway, it's morphed from horn hunting to shed hunting. And I'm sure that with the way the woke generation and all political correctness will probably be antler gathering soon. Or
there you go. Yeah, depriving the landscape of recyclable nutrients.
That's
I knew I got you on that one. You're like,
okay. We already talked about that question.
All right, here's a question. It kind of relates to that. And the other topic people brought up, a lot of comments about what they would do if they were king for a day. Because we had our king for the day comments last episode. There were some interesting comments, but one of the things that I've noticed as horn hunting, I'm going to use horn hunting. That just sounds cooler.
Yeah.
Than antler collecting or whatever. So, folks, don't send us emails if we call it horn hunting. All right. That's what Corey grew up calling it. That's what we're going to call it here. If you don't like that, go listen to another podcast.
That's one way to chase them off, Randy.
I told you, be careful, Corey. I can ruin all of our years of work in a half-hour session. But so some of the questions, not just recently, but over the past 6 months, because of how crowded the woods were last year.
Yeah,
there's a lot of questions about public land etiquette. Is there an etiquette that comes into place with horn hunting?
There is, yeah. And unfortunately, horn hunters, antler hunters, shed hunters, they're typically hunters. I mean, I don't run into a whole lot of people out shed hunting that, aren't hunters.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, any ethics that they might have had during hunting season go out the window when they start shed hunting. I think it's far worse than hunting when it comes to ethics. People are trying to be the first ones into your area, and you would talk about a coy group of individuals. Shed hunters don't even talk about what state they're in, if they're smart, because it's pretty easy with a little bit of Google Earth and a couple of pictures to put two and two together and know what hillside they're standing on. And, there's a lot of tricks that I could teach people about that. But, when you take somebody shed hunting into your area, it's just an unwritten rule that they don't go back there ever. They don't mention it. They don't mention where they were. They don't mention who they were with, because it is, it's such a limited resource and the competition is just so fierce. So if you find a good spot that's got some antler in it, you keep it secret. And it's becoming impossible to go and pick up antlers without seeing boot prints. And the only reason we're still picking up antlers is because there's so many people pushing the elk around that the elk get scattered. They end up dropping an antler here, and 3 miles later they drop the other side, and you're up in snow. And it's when I was doing it 25 years ago, we would wait until April 15th before we even started going out, just so that we could make sure all the elk had dropped. They weren't still in there. The antlers were just laying on the hillside. And then we'd go in there and, hit a ridge or a hillside and find a pile of antlers. Now we go out and hike 11 miles in a day to find 2 antlers that were 11 miles apart. And so it's, that whole ethics of secrecy is huge. And then, I think when it comes to shed hunting, there is no respect for someone else's areas. People will try to find successful shed hunters and follow their vehicle or notice where they're parked and make note of it and go in there the next year, or go in there and pick up what's left. And which is why a lot of states have regulations now, and Montana and Wyoming, Nevada, there's opening days in some of those states, and they wait until May 1st just so the elk are off of their winter grounds. It doesn't work, because all it does is those same people that don't have the ethics when it comes to shed hunting don't care about rules. So the people that obey the rules stand back and let everybody pick up all the antlers, and then May 1st they go in there and they're like, wow, the elk must not have been here this year because there's no antlers.
That's frustrating.
Yeah.
So, spinning that then to some of the questions we had about, one guy mentioned, hey, I was sitting in a blind in Arizona elk hunting. Some dudes on ATVs came up and started spinning donuts out in front of me. And I stuck my head out, and he used... on keyboards, you kind of, you put a whole bunch of weird characters that make no sense.
The Cubert language?
Yeah, I think that meant he told them, hey, get out of here. You're going to get a blankety blank wedgie or noogie. And his question was, do you think that we need to start educating people more about the ethics of public land interactions in general? And I think the easy answer is yes. You always hope that people just use common sense.
Yeah.
But I wonder if a lot of the new people that this is their first year or two out doing this stuff, whether it's hunting or hiking or berry picking or horn hunting, are they just not familiar with what the ethics are or the etiquette is? And so they do stuff and they don't really know, versus how many of them are like, yeah, I know I'm being a jerk, but I don't care.
And I think there is quite a bit of that.
Yeah.
But, and I don't think it's so much the new people. I think, a lot of the new people are learning from someone else, or they're timid enough that they, if they do something, it's not to a level where that it's on purpose. But yeah, so much of what I see is from seasoned people who are just greedy and will stop it at no expense to get what they want, pick up a couple antlers.
Yeah. Well, we run into the same thing with camps. There's kind of two things to this. Is you hike into a basin 3 miles, you set up a camp somewhere, and someone sets up camp 300 yards away from you. It's like, hello.
Yeah.
You saw our camp here in this opening. There's the entire rest of the mountain range here. And they kind of give you the, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah,
look.
It's free country.
And then I've also pulled up to really popular trailheads where every day there's at least 5 vehicles. And I've had people put their wall tent right in the middle of the trail, where I had to walk around their wall tent to use the main trail that goes back and, breaks into 5 different trails once you get back there. It's like, do you think that that's the right thing to do? Somehow that's going to, maybe it did bluff some people to not go in there. For me, that's just like, all right, I'm going to walk right through your camp, and I'm going to make sure tomorrow when I come through, I'm going to come through at about 2 a.m. I'm probably going to sit out there and rev up my truck and wake your sorry butt out of your bed. So I just use those as examples. There's as many examples as there are opportunities for people to be buttheads.
Yeah.
For me, it's, I always use the theory, if someone's here before me, if I hike in and I see somebody is there, it's like, all right, you beat me to it. Good for you. I hope you get one. And I go find my other place and resolve that the next morning I'm going to get the mattress off my back a little earlier. I don't know. I think with the number of outdoor users, we're going to see more and more of this. And I know on my platforms, I'm going to be trying to talk about it more. When we encounter these situations out in the field, talk about, hey, this is the situation. Here's the expected etiquette. If you don't know this, now you do. Or if you're not doing this, hey, think about the other people out here and quit being selfish.
Yeah.
So I just wondered if horn hunting had the same issue.
Yeah, no, there was a guy we know packed in last year. And I mean, we're going remote. This isn't like we're driving an ATV and glassing from it and spotting an antler and going and picking it up. This is, we're going in 7-8 miles and bivvy hunting and spending 2 or 3 days to pick up enough antlers to pack out on a backpack. And it's been probably, close to 10 years since I've had a day where I had to actually leave antlers. Like I found too many that I couldn't pack out. Mm-hmm. And those days are just becoming more and more rare. But last year we went into a spot and we were, a good 8 miles in there. And about 5 miles in, there's a drainage that we know some people shed hunt. Well, the guy was shed hunting it, and he had taken a little raft or something down to cross the creek there and had gone across and then came back to where his camp was. And I don't remember if the next day he stayed on that side or if he woke up the next morning, but somebody came and stole his raft.
Oh, man.
And, I don't understand. You're back in 5 miles somewhere, and shed hunters are the last people that you want to steal something from, because obviously if they're willing to do anything to get an antler, it's not going to be a clean confrontation. But I couldn't imagine stealing a raft 5 miles back in somewhere and packing it out, knowing that there's somebody up on a ridge with binoculars watching, and the chance that you get caught, it's probably not just going to get turned into the local police. There's probably going to be a need for a raft to find that person down the river somewhere. But yeah, I think it's just society in general, just losing a lot of respect for others.
Yeah, and I'm sure you get tired of me saying it, and the audience that I have gets tired of me saying it, but we in the hunting space are a cross-section of our bigger society.
Yeah.
So we're going to have some of the same putzes that society has. And unfortunately, most of the regulations and rules we have, whether it's hunting or, means of take or antler collecting, horn hunting, it's because of the, 1 to 5% who just can't operate in a responsible manner.
Yep.
So the other 95% got to modify their behavior.
Yep.
One of the listeners asked the question, with 2021 coming off one of the worst droughts ever, in 2020 and 2021 being forecast to be the same. Is that impacting? They had a couple of questions. Is that impacting what dates we are planning to hunt this year, or how we plan to hunt? And is there anything hunters can do to help wildlife during a drought phase?
That's a great question. I think yes, and I've learned the hard way. I applied for Utah on one of the worst drought years, and everybody said, "Turn your tag back in. This isn't the year to have the tag." And stubborn me, excited to draw a tag, thought, "Listen, just because there's a shortage of water, there's not a shortage of elk. There's still going to be as many elk there. They're still going to bugle and breed and rut." So, my thought was they'll be more concentrated and it'll be like shooting fish in a barrel. Well, here I am now, 8 or 9 years later, after going on that hunt, still wishing I would have turned that tag back in, because it is tough hunting especially on a severe drought year. It does concentrate the animals, which makes it harder to find them. The rut still happens, but it's very subdued. There's just a lot of negatives that can happen during a severe drought. And we're talking, Arizona, New Mexico, I think they're fairly used to drought conditions. I think what we're looking at, last year, this year so far, it's a pretty severe drought. And I think it's going to have some effect. When we get into states, like Colorado and Idaho and Montana and Wyoming, drought's usually not a topic that comes up, but I saw something the other day that said this is the driest year in the Northwest on record in, I forget how many years at this point. Just the snowpack and the way that it melted off, and they're really concerned about water even in the mountain states. So definitely something to be aware of.
We had a super mild winter here in Montana, and you look at the SNOTEL maps, and some places we had good snow, other places, and if we don't get our normal, this is the time of year we get those really wet snows that stay up there longer in the mountains. We get rain in the valley, snow in the mountain. If we don't get some of that in April and May, we're going to be really in a bad way in Montana this year, because last year was nothing to get real excited about in terms of moisture. And so you go into a year, you're probably a little drier than normal, and then you get a low snowpack. And then if we don't get our spring moisture, could be a tough year, even as far north as Montana. So, but does that change what dates you hunt or anything like that?
Well, I think it might not change, but it definitely comes into play. If I'm hunting, say, Utah, that opens on August 19th, 17th, something like that, opens early. On a drought year, that might be really good hunting, because you're going to be sitting water that early anyway. Elk are going to be very dependent upon water. They're going to be very patternable. And so I think on a drought year, that's the time to sit water. And that's going to be your best bet anyway, as far as a strategy. And so I think, that it comes into play that, hey, this would be a great year to hunt that early season over-the-counter tag in Utah, or, any state that opens early. Water is going to be productive. You get into Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, some of the Rocky Mountain states, and water's not a concern. Yeah, some of the water sources are dried up, but there's water anywhere in the mountains. You're going to find a water source in any mountain in those mountain states. And so finding water isn't a big deal. The elk might have to change their patterns a little bit to go to water based on where they might normally get water. So it doesn't really affect when I hunt. I think the thing that would concern me the most in those states is the fire danger and the possibility of fires in your area, road closures in your area closures in your unit, things like that could put a huge damper on your hunt. So making sure that you have plenty of backup ideas for sure.
Yeah. And for me, in the northern states where, like you say, you get higher elevation, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, it's not the the presence of water that drought causes a problem with, because there's still plenty of it. It's what it does to the forage and how the historical areas that elk have used to start getting that winter fat on, they have to shift and use other areas. And sometimes I feel like I'm hunting a completely new place that I've never been to before.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about places in my backyard of Montana. It's like, where did the elk go? They're always here in, late August. Nope, not this year. Well, it's it's really dry, or sometimes the public land grazers ask for permission to move on to an allotment that normally had been rotated. So some of my projections of where elk will be based on rotation of grazing allotment usage each year changes. So if you're hunting something that is related to a food pattern, expect big changes in elk behavior in a drought year. That's been I say that in the northern states. That's been my experience anyhow. That they're going to be focused. They're not going to be as dispersed across the landscape because the quality forage is no longer dispersed across the landscape. The quality forage that they're looking for is more isolated. So if you can find it, you're going to find higher densities of elk in those areas, but it's harder to locate elk.
Yep.
That's been my experience, and that's that advice is probably worth what somebody paid for it.
No, and you look at, we talked about shed hunting and how the winter's a little different this year. We got snow, but it was a weird timing on the snow, and the weather this spring has been, we haven't got those rains like you were talking about, and the wet snows. It's just turned dry. And what I've noticed is on those south faces, they're exposed to 6,500 feet right now. And typically, we're looking at 5,500 feet, 5,600 feet, somewhere in there. And so the south slopes are way more exposed. On the backside, there's deeper snow. The north slopes have, the north-facing slopes have even deeper snow than what they might have had last year. But the elk are moving out earlier. And whether it's from pressure, every single place that I've been so far this spring, and I've been on 5 shed hunts, every single one of them, I have seen fresh wolf tracks from that day when I'm in there.
Wow.
And these are, 20 miles apart, aerial miles. So it's not the same wolves. There's wolves that are pushing them continually. I noticed the one, I know it was wolves that pushed the elk out of their winter grounds over the top, down the backside into a completely different drainage that I don't think they normally would have went to. And then you look at the cows. The cows are gone from the winter grounds right now over here. They're just where you typically see huge herds of cows right now. They've dispersed, and they're already in their small little groups of 6 or 8 cows, which I really think is going to affect where they're going to spend their summer, which is where the bulls are going to come and find them in the rut. So I think that the elk, from what I'm seeing right now, I would predict the elk are going to be a little more spread out this year. They're going to be in smaller groups. They might be at a little higher elevation than what they normally would be. Maybe where you found the rut last year, it's going to be up the canyon or up the ridge, 500 more feet or 1,000 more feet. There's just a lot of dynamics and variables this year that are coming into play that are going to probably have an effect.
Yeah. Well, the other part of the question is, what can hunters or their organizations do? And in some states, I know in Arizona Game and Fish, along with a bunch of their conservation groups, the RMEF being one of them, are funding or paying to have water trucked out to these artificial guzzlers. Because those guzzlers, if you've ever seen one on the hillside, it's a great big metal apron that's got a plastic liner. And when it rains, that metal apron doesn't allow the moisture to go into the soil. It runs down using gravity into collection tanks. And then it has, almost like in your toilet, it's got the float in it. And that keeps these small tanks filled that the wildlife uses. Well, right now, some of those are so dry that there's no water that collected last year. So they're going out and actually filling some of those big holding tanks. So you can help with that, either your time or your money. Longer term, if the patterns we read about are going to prevail, where we're going to be hotter and drier in the future, one of the things we got to think about is the pinyon juniper progression on the landscape and what that has done to surface water. You talk to pretty much any ecologist, any range specialist, and they will tell you one of the biggest water hogs on the landscape is the pinyon juniper communities that have expanded greatly because of fire suppression, because of a whole bunch of other things. And those pinyon juniper complexes are having an impact on how much surface water there is for wildlife. And a lot of people probably don't think of it in that context, but we're going to have to start managing pinyon juniper aggressively for a multitude of reasons. Surface water, even groundwater, probably to some degree, being an important part of that. And so if you're wondering what you can do, get involved in those projects, advocate to your agencies or your land managers that you want to see more of this taken care of, more of this done, restored more to what it was before we started suppressing fire to the degree that we do. And that does a lot of things for wildlife. Right now, Arizona's embarking on a huge project doing this. It's like 250,000 acres. They're going to mechanically treat a lot of it to get rid of it's mostly getting rid of pinyon juniper, and they're trying to restore traditional grasslands. And when you talk to their scientists, what that will do for birds, I mean, we're talking like songbirds and rodents and everything else, in addition to putting more water on the landscape, is quite remarkable. So I'm interested to see how that turns out. My crew went down and filmed the start of that project last summer. And each year we're going to go down and film more of it to say, here's the before and the after. And those are things that hunters can be doing to improve the landscape during these drought years. Because most of our landscapes, when we're having really great weather years or lots of moisture, can support lots of elk, can support, a lot of whatever. It's when you start getting on the margins of the weather cycles where the marginal habitat, which a lot of our habitat has become marginal because it doesn't get managed, that's when you really see the amplified effects of drought, predation, whatever it is. So I would ask people to go do those kind of things.
And I forget the numbers, talking about the pinyon junipers, because when we went out for the Hunt of a Lifetime hunt that we do every year, 2 years ago, I was concerned because I'm seeing all these pinyon junipers that are just literally chainsawed down and laying on the ground, the whole mountainside cut down, like clear cut, and all they didn't do anything with it. They didn't cut it up. They didn't pile it to be burned. And so, we started asking what was going on, and it's for more water for the livestock and the cattle and the ranchers and everything out in that area. And I forget the number, but it was an astronomical number of the output from just the little streams and the springs in that area, how much those pinyon junipers drew out of groundwater. It was just incredible. And to be able to cut all those down and kill them so that they aren't a drain on that resource, allowed that resource to be used up by other things that needed it. And here we are, I think, close to 3 years later now, and they've done that in multiple areas out there. And I've noticed a difference just from year to year in the amount of water coming down some of those little mountain streams that you have to cross to get up into hunting areas, and it's pretty significant. Yeah. But the effort required to do something like that's pretty significant too. So I'm sure there are volunteer opportunities.
Yeah, and if you want to read the consequences of all this, I have a study that I have bookmarked that I go out and read often. It's called, you go to sciencedirect.com, and this study is Rangeland Ecology and Management Volume 7, Issue 1, from January 2017. And it's the pinyon and juniper encroachment into sagebrush ecosystems and the impacts on the distribution and survival of greater sage grouse. And the conclusion is that these pinyon juniper encroachments are having a huge impact on our sage land communities, which used to be very big, large communities, not disrupted by all these pinyon juniper. Pinyon juniper increases the likelihood of predation. It changes the whole fire cycle. Often at times brings with it cheatgrass, which there's just a whole list of things. It's a really, really interesting study to read about what's going on out there. But if anyone wants to go out there, just I don't know what you would Google. Science Direct and probably pinyon juniper encroachment. It'd show up. But I don't have enough to do, but those kind of studies are things that I find fascinating. And sometimes they change my mind on things. Sometimes I read something and it's like, oh, that's completely different than what I thought it was. But I'm inclined to rely on the scientists rather than the dude down at the coffee shop or the bar.
Really?
Yeah. But or if I could get my Facebook page back, I guess maybe I could have some of the Facebook experts tell me how it is. But so those are things that I think people could do. We can't change the weather, but we can help the landscape and help those who are less adaptable because let's face it, the human condition or the human word of progress certainly has pushed the wild things to the fringes of their habitat. So we got to do what we can to help out.
Totally.
So, I'm not going to talk about this because we got so many emails about it. And
so we aren't going to talk about it?
No, I'm just going to tell all of you who sent the email saying, I want to volunteer to be the amateur team on Corey's Destination Elk. I almost say we probably shouldn't have put that out there because I think some people took it as an invitation that somehow you were serious about that.
There was definitely a call for applications that was perceived by many listeners, and we received many applications to be that group. And you know what? I think it's a great idea. I'm not saying that we aren't going to do that at some point because I think it's great. I think we could find some newer hunters that are maybe in the hunting industry, but just haven't hunted elk a lot and get them involved. But I think it'd be really cool to pick someone from our followers or listeners to be involved in it. Someone new that's not been successful yet. Probably not this year, just because we've got to get the whole project and get the platform ironed out and all that. But I could see in the future maybe trying to do something like that.
Yeah. Well.
So hold the applications for now.
Yeah, I'll leave that up to you. But I just wanted people to know that we did get all of your emails, and we're not ignoring them. It's just that I don't think we realized that there would be this perceived idea that this was a call for applicant. Oh well, teach us, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
So, a couple questions came up, and I'd probably send people to the University of Elk Hunting course for that more gory details on this and the stuff that you and I have committed that we're going to do more of this summer, add more content. But this one person who wrote kind of summarizes it best. It says, I love the way that you explained your elk calendar. What are the standard date ranges of these 5 seasons you always talk about? How much can they change? What changes them, etc.? And I think the person is referring to how I need to make things simple. So I can't process more than 5 concepts in one bigger picture. So I broke my elk hunting calendar. It's not a human calendar. It doesn't have August, September, October, November, December. It has early season, pre-rut, peak rut, post-rut, late season. And the person is asking, what are the standard date ranges of those 5 seasons? And there is no standard. And it's not like they flip the calendar. They get up in the morning and say, hey, boys, just so everyone knows, today is September 11th. This means that it's peak rut.
Time to go.
Yesterday was pre-rut. Today's peak rut. It doesn't happen that quickly. And for me, I use this because each of these 5 periods, the elk have a different need in that period. So when they're in an early season pattern, which I always say is before September 1st, we aren't hunting that. I mean, it's usually the early archery seasons you're talking about, but the elk are on a feed pattern then. And so they're going to be in certain locations where the best feed on the landscape is in August. Well, that's going to be completely different than where you find them in late November for a couple of reasons. One, they're no longer looking for food. They're looking for sanctuary because they hear all these gunshots going off and they want to live to see the next summer. So I use this to illustrate how elk move across the landscape in each of these periods that I mentioned to satisfy the need they have. And so the person's asking this, and for me, like I said, early season is usually August. When I say pre-rut, and this changes sometimes by elevation, changes by latitude, a day or two, but I usually say the first 10 days of September is kind of that pre-rut phase. And you've shot a lot of elk in that pre-rut phase with calling. So I don't want people to think that that's not a time to be out there hunting. And then I usually say, all right, peak rut comes somewhere September 10th through the 15th and runs till October 5th through the 10th, something like that. And then we go into the post-rut that usually you can count on a pretty predictable post-rut pattern, October 15th to the end of October. And then I have late season, which is November 1st and later. And the biggest difference between post-rut and late season is the bulls go from super tight sanctuaries, hardly moving at all, and being solo, to once you get into November, once they start getting in bachelor groups, that's when I start saying, okay, we're in a late season pattern. And because temperature, just the fact that they got to start putting some fat back on or taking in energy to get through the winter, it causes them to be out later in the morning and earlier in the afternoon than what you'd see in the post-rut phase. So none of that is, set hard and fast on the calendar. But I think in your course, I did a video a few years ago about that.
You did, yeah. Talking about, and it was more specific to the post-rut and late season, rifle hunting. But yeah, you did break down, showed all those calendar periods, and talked about what the elk's needs are in each of those periods, which is really important to understand. Because if you want to hunt elk any day of the year, all you need to know is what their needs are. You can find elk any day of the year if you understand what an elk's primary need is. And I think the way that you break that down, those needs, those calendar periods you talk about, the needs change with those. That's almost the driver for those calendar periods. It's not some date of the year or some other event. It is when do the needs of the elk change? When do they change from water and feed to breeding? When do they change from breeding to sanctuary? All these different things, understanding when they change and maybe why they change. You can go out and find elk much easier just with that little bit of understanding. Yeah.
So you're too bashful to make the plug, Corey. So I'm going to make the promo plug for you. If folks go out to your university course, they go to elk101.com and sign up and use promo code Elk Talk. Is that right?
That's right.
And you're going to give them a discount.
$20 discount.
Man.
Yeah. So instead of $99, they get the University of Elk Hunting online course. And that's everything. That's all the information, every module, every chapter. That is discounts from some of our partners. That is a discount in the Elk 101 store. some other opportunities for members. And I would say, based on the response over the last few weeks from Randy, you plugging it, since I'm not comfortable doing that, it's there are a lot of people who listen to you and respect your referral on that. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, and that I always joke that my advice is worth what you pay for it, which because it's always free. But for you, for your course, the advice that they get there is going to be worth way more than what they pay for it. You need to raise your price.
I think we've talked about it before, but when I had it first appraised by an online course group, that they come in and tell you what the realistic rate is. I mean, I think the range they gave me was $490 to $760 or something like that, based on the amount of information and the level of that information. But that's where it is. You look at it, I filled up my truck the other day. It cost me $83 to fill up my truck one time. That's one scouting trip. That's one shed hunting trip. That's one trip in September or October elk hunting. And we pay that, and it stings a little bit, but we still do it. We go out and buy, $400 pair of boots or a $1,000 bow or a $500 backpack. But we're forgetting about the most important item of gear we have, and that's us and our knowledge. And to invest $79 in that, I think it's money well spent. I think it might, whether it's worth it or not, I think it's money well spent.
Well, I know you'll never do this, but if you don't raise your price pretty soon, I don't know if I'm going to be your friend.
Wow.
And you're like, well, fine, don't be my friend then. I'm not raising my price.
Let me make a list of pros and cons on each side of the table here.
You're thinking, well, if it would have been that easy, knew it was that easy to get rid of you, I would have had this discussion a long time ago. So here's a question from a guy. I'm not going to use the unit. He actually went so far as to say what unit he hunts. I'm trying to schedule my first elk hunt this year. A friend and I are looking into unit blank in Colorado, the third-ish week of September. A summary of this unit is elevation ranges from 6,000 to 8,500 with a lot of roads. I'm not sure that all of the roads are open, however. We selected this unit for the large percentage of public land and its high success rate. With this being a lower unit and more of a winter range, I'm concerned that this may not be the best choice for us. Any thoughts overall about lower elevations, large quantity of roads, and hunting the third week of September? So, the first thing that enters my head when someone says this is winter range is the high success rate in this unit because of the rifle hunts later in the year, possibly cow elk hunts later in the year.
Yeah, it'd be important to understand what those what the information is really telling you. Is it specific to archery season, September 1st through September 30th, archery hunters? Is that a high success rate, or is it the unit-wide success rate of the total number of hunters that hunt there from August whatever through December whatever? The other thing is when you say low winter range, there's places we go and shed hunt that I would consider to be winter range, where the elk are still at during the rut. So they don't necessarily, they don't migrate a whole long ways to get into that area in some places. I think the thing that concerns me the most from that email is low winter range coupled with lots of roads, coupled with third week of September, which is the most popular week to archery hunt, coupled with the fact that there's a muzzleloader season in Colorado, if that's the state you're referring to. That would raise some red flags, that combination of those factors.
Yeah. So to spin this a slightly different direction, but in the same vein, I'll tell you the factors I use when I'm selecting an over-the-counter unit in a place like Colorado or, Wyoming. You draw the general tag. There's all a whole assortment of units you get to hunt. For me, I do usually first look at what are the success rates. Then almost on equal terms of that is the bull to cow ratio and the cow to calf ratio, because looking at those trends, if they're going up or at least staying steady, it tells you the health of the herd in overall numbers. And then the other part is really subjective, is I look at, is this type of terrain the kind of terrain I like to hunt? There's some types of habitat and terrain I'm not that excited about hunting. If it's big, just vast expanses of dark timber, I just am not attracted to those areas. I don't have a lot of fun in there. So I might pass on a unit that has higher success rates if it's the type of terrain I don't enjoy hunting. And I know that's super subjective, but we're also here to have fun. We're here to do it in a place that we think our hunting style is best suited for. So that's why I might shy away from some units that meet every other criteria I have and go to a different unit that meet most of the criteria, but maybe not as well as the other unit.
Yep.
So, and that's not a science. That's just me saying this is what I like to do. This is how I like to hunt. So, and for me, I'd say I try to make sure there's at least 40 to 50% public land in a unit when I go. But sometimes that can be a little deceiving, because if it's just a complete checkerboard, that's really tough to hunt.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's 50% public land. If it's all checkerboard, that complicates my life. Whereas if it's 45% public land, but all that public land is consolidated in one big block, you know what? I can have a pretty darn good hunt in that if it's one great big block of public land.
Yeah.
So there's no, I don't want to say to this person's, trying to answer this person's question and make it applicable to other places and other situations. For me, there is no hard and fast rule about it. This is a bit of a shortcut. I go hunt on their Insider and Filtering 2.0, and those criteria I just listed, I can just say I want units that meet this criteria, this criteria, this criteria, boom, and say apply, and those show up on the map.
And it gets rid of all the other ones. And that's what I was just going to say. That Filtering 2.0 it's just incredible, because like you said, I have a lot of the same features that I look at, success rates, public land, season dates, those sort of things. And you start putting that in, and units disappear from the map. And you're left with 5 or 6 units maybe that meet your criteria. Then you can click on each of those and get the nitty gritty, the details about what the terrain is like. There's even pictures of most of the units, so you can get an idea of what the terrain looks like. It's going to talk about trophy potential. It's going to, all of those things, even for an over-the-counter hunt or a general hunt in those states. And you can really narrow it down. And then with the information, the detailed information that they provide on each of the units, you can pick your unit and know that it's going to be most closely matched to your expectations. And that's powerful. That's, for me, that's probably my favorite part of Go Hunt Insider membership.
Yeah, and you think about how much time we used to spend doing that back in the day. It's ridiculous how much time you had to spend, because you had to go to the game agency to get this information. You had to go to the land management agency for this, and you were looking all this stuff up and kind of holding your finger on this page and your other index finger over on this map, and it's like, even if you did have all the information, getting it right, it wasn't a guarantee I was going to get it all right. And so now in less than 3 minutes, I do a search, and there it is. And that just leads me down the path. It eliminates all the other things that don't meet my criteria. So for this person's question, those are the priorities I put to it. And when the map says, okay, here's the remaining 6 or 7 units. Those 6 or 7 units are the one that I go into and I say, all right, which of these really intrigue me based on my hunting style, and go from there.
Yep.
So,
and Go Hunt breaks that down. I mean, they tell you, hey, a lot of this is winter grounds, and the elk aren't going to be there unless they get an early snow and it pushes them down. Or they're going to say most of the elk are up at the top of the mountains, and you're going to have to hike, 3,000 feet to get up to where the elk are because the trailheads and the roaded access is so limited. So, I mean, they do a great job of giving you an overview of the unit with some pretty good detailed information.
Yeah. So if you want to do that and save all this time, once again, promo code Elk Talk. What do they get them at Go Hunt if they become an insider member? A $50 gift card, I think.
Yeah, $50 to the Go Hunt gear shop.
Cool. Well, even a tightwad accountant like me can justify that. You know how exciting it is for me today, Corey? It's April 15th, 2021. And normally this would be tax day. Like the IRS and Congress decided to prolong the agony till May 17th.
I was going to say,
extending everything, but
April 15th isn't all that exciting this year.
Yeah. I have done this year, I've done my tax return, a bunch of my LLCs, my mom's tax return, my son's tax return, my mother-in-law's tax return. And I think I did one for a client. It's April 15th, and I couldn't give two hoots what the tax deadline is. It hasn't even entered my mind that I got to go and do something, that I'm in a big rush. That's cool.
That's great. Yeah, you must be transferring out of being an accountant. You're going to have to quit using that as an excuse.
I know. Yeah, I quit. Everyone says, "Oh, must be nice to retire at your age." I'm like, I didn't retire. That implies I had enough money. I just quit. That
implied you didn't want the stress and the headache.
Right. And when you lay on the couch most of December barking like a seal because you got COVID, it quickly registers in your mind that, you know what, I only have so many hunting years ahead of me. Heck with these tax returns. I'll die in poverty before I'm going to give up any more of my days stressing about that stuff. So, oh well. I wrote down the date here on this set of notes, and I kept looking at it. I'm like, April 15th. Oh, yeah. Most CPAs have pulled their last 3 hairs out of the side of their head by now. So.
Yep. Well, congratulations on your
quitting. Yeah. Yeah.
That is nice. I know it's trying to do 2 things or 10 things at once. It just adds to the stress levels. So when you can eliminate one of those pretty major pieces and components out of your schedule, it takes a little load of that stress off. Yeah.
Another couple people asked this question, and they were directed at you because it was mostly archery hunting.
I thought you were going to say 'cause it was negative.
No. I'll summarize these emails this way by saying, how important is it to get away from roads in archery season compared to rifle season? Is it that big of a factor for you? Like, I try to get away from them in rifle season, or do you just say, hey, the elk are going to be where they can satisfy their need in September, roads or no roads?
Yeah, I think, that goes back to your question and your information on the needs and the seasons. That need for sanctuary, I think, is more prevalent for sure during the post-rut. Out of all the seasons, sanctuary during the post-rut is the most important or the highest priority need. So I think that it's not as important during archery season. I know you've mentioned the study they did in the Starkey Experimental Forest in Oregon that the elk preferred a certain distance away from roads. So I think, just common sense would say elk aren't going to be hanging out right alongside of a road, and the more busy the road is, the less likely they're going to be hanging out there. So all those things taken into consideration, I would say no, elk are not as affected by roads during archery as they are during rifle.
Yeah. Okay. That was kind of, if the question was directed at me, which the person's very smart to not direct an archery question at me, that's probably the way I would have generally answered it. I've had way better luck in roaded areas in archery season than I have in rifle season.
Yeah.
Just so when you think about what their needs are, some of those roaded areas are roaded because of logging or thinning, and that creates some really good feed. And the cows are looking for the best feed all the time, and sometimes that's where they're going to be. And I'm not advocating for more roads everywhere just for that purpose, but there are times where people drive past elk because they want to get 8 miles back from the trailhead.
Yeah.
Well, don't walk past elk to find don't walk past elk to find other hunters. Marcus in our office calls it the Randy Newberg reverse effect, that he says he's now seeing more elk within a mile of a road or trailhead than he used to, because I'm telling everybody to go way back in there, and they're scaring all the elk closer to the road. We joke about it. I think that's more of a joke than it is reality. But the point of that is find out where the elk are going to satisfy their need at that time of year. And if there's roads, there's roads. If the roads are closed and the elk are there, they're there for a reason. It's satisfying that need. So.
Yep.
But you got any? I meant to ask you this. Last year we heard about all these broken bulls that had broken antlers.
Mm-hmm.
Are you seeing that in the shed hunting, antler horn hunting?
We don't. Idaho's just one of those states that, it's similar to Montana and Wyoming, and those mountain elk just aren't as affected by drought, which I think is what had a big effect on a lot of the antlers getting broken last year. And we're talking, most of what I saw was in desert type units, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, places where the drought did affect their antler growth and did affect the density of the antlers through the nutrition that they got. But here, they've got moisture. The elk don't go without moisture. Even their feed has moisture on a dry year, just because of where we live, and the snow that we rely on for spring runoff contributes to the moisture they need throughout the year. So I haven't noticed it in any of my shed hunting. I don't think anything that I've picked up has been broken at all, other than maybe a chip off of a tip from fighting or something, but no broken tines, no broken beams or anything.
Yeah. Well, I hope that this year I find some of those bulls that got passed on last year because someone said, that antler's broke, I'm going to pass on him.
Yep.
Maybe there's a bunch of bulls that got to be an extra year older on account of that.
There might be a few.
So, yeah, maybe.
Are there any application deadlines coming up?
Let's see. Nevada, May 10th is coming up for all species. If you're into moose, goat, and sheep, end of April, 1st of May for moose, goat, and sheep in Idaho and Montana. Oregon, all species, is May 15th, I think it is.
So, yeah.
And then you guys down in Idaho, you have your controlled hunt deadline for elk, deer, and antelope is June 5th.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. So
a few states left.
Yeah, there's a few left. Yeah, did you notice how many emails we got when the flurry of emails we got when the Arizona tags came out?
Yep.
Whoa. Some guy is
sounds like Montana must have released their results here in the last day or two, because I've seen a lot of chatter. Chatter on that.
Yeah. Some guys, like I had I'm not going to tell you how many points I had, but it rhymes with hero. And I drew this tag in this unit. I'm like, you know what? Good for you.
Yeah.
You drew a good tag. But he drew one of the late archery November archery tags. So those are a lot easier to draw. So it doesn't surprise me too much. But so many questions. I have the tag for this unit. What would you do? The answer is depends.
Yeah.
So
it's such a loaded question, and maybe that's something, with when people ask us these questions, the more details you can provide, the more information you can provide, the better we're going to be able to answer it. Because if somebody just says, I'm thinking about going hunting in Colorado in the next 5 years, what unit should I look at?
Yeah.
I mean, the whole state, they all have elk, so look at all of them.
Right.
If they say, I want to go hunting this fall, I don't have time to make a scouting trip out there, what unit should I go hunting? Here's my physical limitations. Here's how many days I have. At least we're able to narrow it down and give them, we're going to say, hey, go to unit X. We're going to say, I would look at these factors, figure out what the bull to cow ratio is, what the success rate is, and narrow it down that way. Giving him some information, possibly about certain units that might be steep and rugged or something like that. But Randy and I just aren't able to give specifics, and hopefully that makes sense. Part of it's the ethics of hunting that we talked about at the beginning of this, that hunting areas and shed hunting areas are kind of sacred. And the other thing is you've got to realize that with our platforms, if we started telling people, giving them ideas of where to go, everybody would hate us, even the people that we give the idea to, because we're going to give the same information to everybody else. And so I think it's so much more valuable to share the information to look for to make that decision than to share the information of where to go. That way, hunters are able to find specifically what fits them and their style, and they're able to do that research and go and find their own area.
Yeah. Yeah, we get an awful lot of criticism for even being vague.
Yeah.
Why are you giving this information? It took me 31 years to learn how to do that. Well, we're here to try lower hurdles. And then the flip side of it, I've had people ask me for GPS coordinates, unit numbers, trailheads. I mean, precision stuff. And when I say, I have a standard answer out of respect to other applicants and other hunters, I don't provide that information, and they've contacted my sponsors.
Yeah.
I'm like, really?
I can't believe you sponsor this guy. I can't believe you partner with him. He's worthless. He won't tell me right where to hunt.
Yeah, he won't give me those GPS coordinates or where that dead bull was laying. But oh well, it just, we've been at it long enough, and we try our best to use discretion and walk that fine line of what's helpful information and what helps people do it themselves, get over the hurdles and learn how rather than learn where. So, but
it's the whole, give a man a fish and you feed him for a meal and teach him how to do it and feed him for a life. And that's, I think, the same principle here.
Yep. So, well, Corey, before I divert into another Facebook tangent, I think we're probably going to let the audience go, because I've now had enough time to, I don't know if it's cool down or heat up. I'm about ready to go do another live. Tomorrow morning is going to be the 7th, the 1 week anniversary. I definitely got to do another live event tomorrow morning. I'm going to do it on Instagram again.
Are you?
See? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hey, you blankety blank. No, I'm not going to do that. But I did get a little bit out in the weeds a little bit. My wife listened to it. She's like, I told you not to say those kind of things. Sorry, honey. Sometimes it just slips out. And when you're live, It's not like I can say, hey, everybody, let's roll that back. There's not like a 10-second delay in what comes out of my mouth and what hits the live Instagram feed.
Yep.
So I just had to apologize to my wife. I know you don't like it when I say stuff like that, but it just happened. So.
No, it's frustrating. When you're trying to run a business, it's one thing when you're just out there for the social aspect of it. When you're trying to run a business off of a platform and that platform gets hacked, it's a real
But the
pain.
good part is I talked to my 5 largest sponsors about all this. And they all said, you know what, Randy, you probably reach them in your videos and your podcasts, everywhere else. Do a story of how this is evolving and what's happening. And if you want to leave Facebook, we're on board with you, man. We're tired of that outfit also. So I don't know that my platform or my world is going to travel too much further down the path of Facebook.
Yeah.
Which is just fine because that's kind of, I got drawn into Facebook kicking and screaming anyhow. So it's like, now people are going to say, Newberg, you just had some people hack your channel so that you could use it as an excuse to get off of Facebook.
Pieces are all coming together here. The agency that runs your Facebook is in charge of it, has all the information. Randy's the guy behind the curtain on this one.
I wish that was the case.
All at poor Facebook's expense.
Yeah. Well, I say we let them go, Corey. But before we do, let's remind them that they should become members of the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, because if you are, I promise you're going to shoot more elk this year.
Yep.
Guaranteed.
Guaranteed. Money back guarantee. Randy's money back. Not the RMEF membership, but
no, just you can take that to the bank. You're going to feel good about what you did. You're going to look at all this access you helped create, which lowers hunter densities. Everyone's complaining that it's too crowded on public land. Well, we need more access. Yep. That's what we need. And you can help with that. So rmef.org, go sign up.
Or if you're in San Antonio, Texas this weekend, RMEF is going to be on site at the Total Archery Challenge, and I will be there as well. So,
you will?
Yeah, come by the RMEF booth. I'll be in the booth on Saturday, and then we'll be participating in the RMEF after party Saturday night, and doing a little Q&A and elk calling seminar. So.
Cool. Yeah. You know what my crew asked? They said, next time you talk to Corey, ask him if he'd do this. We're having an argument in the office here over who's the best elk caller. So they're wanting to know, if you come to Montana for the Big Sky RMEF Total Archery Challenge, if you judge our office elk calling contest.
Wow. Yeah, that's YouTube content right there. I will judge it if somebody records it.
Okay. I'll tell them that.
Yep.
They'll be all calling up Kurt over at Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls. Hey, cut a little hole in Randy's reeds and stuff. Send him some bum gear or whatever.
That would be fun.
Oh, we put that on the comedy channel.
Yep.
Put that on my Facebook page.
There you go. That'll get $13,000 of revenue.
I'll split it with you if you can figure that out. Well, thanks, Corey. Appreciate it. And,
thank you.
We'll gather again next week.
Sounds great. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, folks.